went and checked the meaning for crisis. And it said, it was pretty interesting. It said crisis is a mix of opportunity and danger. So it's a mix of danger and opportunity. So there is no doubt there are going to be some dangerous fallouts, whether it's health, whether it's economic fallout, but then there is also an opportunity. And that's how it got me thinking, how about reframing this thinking to say, what could be the opportunities as an organization that we could look at? So what I'm sharing with you are some of the learnings, I would say, in the last 45 days as an organization that we have learned, and also as a personal, I would say, as a personal mission, because I lead org transformation. So when you talk about transformation, when you talk about big changes, usually a pandemic, usually a crisis tends to stop things, tends to put a stopper on a lot of stuff that you are doing. So how do you then still make way? How do you still make headway in the work that you are doing? And therefore, what are the opportunities? What are the ways to think about it? That's exactly what I'm covering today. With that, if I move to the, if we can move to the next slide, this is a quick sort of like a backdrop, and I call it a backdrop because all these were happening or had started happening in a big way, and these are multi-speed things that were happening, I would say, the last 18, 20, 24 months in a very, very a different manner across the world. So this is a pre-pandemic view of what were the 7 big disruptors, the way I call it, across the world. And if you really look at what those big disruptors are, these are really the people disruptors, or things that are going to disrupt how the workforce is going to shape in the future. And as you look at these disruptors, the first thing that you start, and as I cover each of these, you would start seeing that much of these are things that you might be aware of, but seeing it all together sometimes helps. And this was a slide that I had worked on and put together sometime, I would say, end of 2019, really to make a compelling case within our own company to say, we are a bank. We've been in banking for many, many years. And therefore, as we are looking to now compete with fintechs, as we are looking to compete with some of the new age companies to attract talent, retain, and also grow talent, then what are some of the big disruptors that we need to be aware of that we have to start catching up on? So the first one I'll start with is technology is everywhere. And it was surprising when I read that, and now we are already in 2020. We will probably end this year with somewhere over 6 billion smartphones in the world. I also got yesterday a very interesting statistics about just internet usage in India. I believe the non-metro locations are outstripping the internet usage bandwidth as compared to metro areas, which means the non-metro areas in India, as an example, are having access to smartphones and also are at this point accessing different digital, either for different digital needs or for different usages that they are already starting to put. Incidentally, in the last 45 days, the biggest sales spike that's happened is for smartphones and computers. The second one is the tsunami of data, which is really a big one from a machine learning standpoint. So the last 2 years have seen a huge, huge amount of data churn. And with the amount of digital footprint that's starting to increase right now, this 9x last 2 years has actually more than doubled. The next one, of course, is the diversity and generational change. We knew that millennials already are coming into workforce in a big way, and millennials only at this point might be a small sliver or percentage in a few companies, but are a big percentage in especially the new age companies. And when I say the generational mix and diversity and the expectation of what they want from work, how they want to work, where they want to work, all those are significantly different from where you have the others. And therefore, that brings us to the change in nature of a career. You no longer are anyway employing anyone for a lifetime. And that is true of most of our careers as well. Those who are on this call, those who are listening to it, if we all opened our resumes and looked at it, we have all jumped careers, we have all moved because after a point, either the work wasn't interesting or we didn't get the growth we thought we wanted, or end of the day, it was not something that interested us, or the boss didn't give us interesting work. So you can call it whatever, but the nature of career is going to even more be challenging from just the longevity. Therefore, what people are now seeking is lifetime of employment and employability, but not necessarily with the same company. And then finally, if you look at some of the big ones that are really the transformative or the enablers of transformation, those are listed on the right-hand side of the screen, which is the AI, computing, robotics. And here it gives you a cost of what it used to be to invest and start something in 2008, which was almost $500,000. And now it is just 22,000. So the access to technology, access to the value has become radically cheaper. The other one, of course, is on the vulnerability of automation. And automation today is not just the digital transformation related, but it could be small things like, and I can give you an example that we are doing right now within the bank. We don't just have products which are do it yourself, which means you are given an app and the customer is expected to do it themselves. We also have a lot of customers, especially in the US, who are significantly older and do not have any experience of working with an app. They were always traditionally used to going into a bank and banking. That has changed with Corona. So with the COVID situation right now, they cannot go into a bank, but they need help. So we now have different types of automation, one of them being do it with me, which means a banker actually helps with a screen share and helps on the customer's device how to execute an order, how to navigate, etc. So we have now started more of the do it with me on the app than do it yourself. So that's just an example of the automation and the level of change that will bring. As you can see, there are some statistics put for UK, US, China. The reason I have not put anything for India at this point is India is still a little far from the automation chain, simply because we at this point are from India supporting a lot of the cognitive or the thinking work, which is not exactly automatable. Whereas in China, you can see most of the work that happens is largely manufacturing, and that is why you have such a large percentage. In the US, there is still opportunity for a lot of offshoring. There is a lot of opportunity for automation, especially in basic operations, whether it's in banking, whether it's in auto. There is still a ton of opportunity, and therefore that's why some of these have been quoted the way they are. And finally, there is this big contingent work and the gig work that is starting to explode even more. So if you have heard of Amazon Turk, you have heard of all those examples of all the gig companies that are growing. I believe COVID-19 has just made that industry also explode quite a bit. And we can talk about some of this explosion of contingent work, not just as contingent workers, but also within our own company. We are starting to see work getting broken down to smaller pieces and almost getting crowdsourced across the organization. Before I move, I will be curious to ask everybody a question, and you can type in the chat box. Do you see some of these starting to affect your companies? If yes, what would be the topmost disruptor that you started seeing in your own company or in your own professional life? We'll probably take a minute, do that, and then move to the next one. And as people start typing their responses, maybe we'll move to the next slide and start talking through while people are typing. So one of the first things that I wanted to talk about as we transition now to the opportunity side is what are some of the new ways of how we are coping, how we are thinking about what is happening currently within our own bank. So the first one, of course, is really this whole piece about the crisis and how do you respond to a crisis. And what you see on the left-hand side is not the traditional BCP or the traditional way of working that we did in the past, which is have a BCP document or a business continuity plan document and just go through that document to say, okay, what are the steps? Here we had to do a very different way of thinking and working through. And I just see a comment. Thank you, Murli. Growth plans have been reduced. That's very interesting. I guess it's a direct fallout in India from everything that is happening globally because of COVID. So that is a huge disruption. That is interesting. And going back to this slide, what we did was we actually bucketed the problem in different ways. The first we said was, and the core for us is going to be protecting people. The second was to how do you still manage to have productive work, which means we cannot have any breakdown of service. So how can we maintain productivity? How do we measure productivity? The third, of course, was how do we manage the costs? So while you have all of these happening, how do we keep an eye on cost? And then finally, a couple of things that became really the nerve center was now how do you start at some point preparing for your recovery readiness, and how do you also have a communication that goes out to everybody, is relatable, and it is consistent, and how do you keep your people engaged? So that's why I'm saying the last point actually has become the nerve center for us. So the purpose-led communication right now, if you ask me, is the most important part of the entire piece around stabilizing and mobilizing in crisis. And this is a new way of working. I don't think in the bank we have ever done anything like this. So each of these were like work streams that came together and worked together to actually run this. So there were point people in each of these, but this was the first time that we came together across different areas. And you can sort of make out from each of these who these folks would be. The first one being CHRO and the HR leadership. And then the last one, as an example, was our corporate communications team. And therefore, each of these had people from finance, strategic finance, to the business lines, to HR, having to work together day in and day out to actually bring and mobilize and stand up this piece together. Now we are at an inflection point, and that's why I'm calling it the inflection point, because now we are starting to talk about how are we going to get people back into offices. And therefore, we said, okay, from an organization perspective, while we have stabilized, while we have done what we could in the last 45 days, here we have to start making decisions based on a few things. And what are those few things? And we said the first one is health and safety. Now, never before have we said that health and safety or employee preference is going to be the heart and soul of this. And yet, we are now talking very aggressively about sequencing the type of work, financials, everything with employee preference and health and safety in mind. And again, as you see, when we are talking about having this post return to work situation, which is on the right hand side, strategizing and preparing for return to work, which is all in those pink and red boxes. We are at this point where we are transitioning, we are setting up a transition office to set a lot of the long-term strategy. And again, these are new ways of working for us. This is, as I said, a bank that's been around for a long, long time in the US. And for us to think and work in different ways to say, okay, we have done what we could, getting back to work is not enough. Let's start thinking about what are some of the longer term impacts. How do we know how our facilities need to be for the longer term? We had set up facilities that would be more agile friendly, which means people could work, participate in a lot of healthy discussion. But with COVID, this will have to be different. Should we also think different ways of how our facilities should be in the future? And finally, apart from managing the health and safety, which is a huge, huge piece with Corona, we are also talking about how do we manage change at an enterprise level. So that will sort of take me to the next slide. And probably the next slide is and a very, very, I would say, interesting one for most of the HR professionals. And therefore, as we start looking at the different parts of the transition office, these are some of the people impacts that we are starting to see, which will hit us. The first one, of course, is we are already starting to think about what our external talent will look like in the next 12 months or 18 months. One of those being the work itself is probably going to look different. The skill sets that we need, we probably need people who can multitask. You should be good at home. You should be able to manage all the distractions. You should be in a position to still manage your productivity, have the ability to help your kids come back to what you were doing, and take care of yourself. So it's sort of a slightly different talent profile that we might start looking at. So therefore, what does that new normal for the new workforce talent look like? We are also now starting to think about some of the new role requirements. I alluded to the fact that now we are starting to do shared capability on the app, not just giving the app to the customer, but actually helping the customer through a shared screen, etc. And therefore, we are starting to see new roles such as a digital ambassador. So we are creating some roles already where we are thinking of having digital ambassadors in some of our key branches to increase our digital uptake. And their requirement will be to actually reduce the physical footfall in the branches, as an example. Onboarding is a big one. We, at this point, are already implementing an onboarding technology, and that should be fairly streamlined. It should take away a lot of noise, but we are also starting to see how else we can enhance that whole onboarding to be more virtual onboarding. We are already going to get our first set of interns for the summer entirely as a virtual onboarding, and they will be working virtually with us. This is a huge experiment again, and we had committed to them on campus, and we decided to keep up the commitment. This is going to be very, very challenging for the managers, and therefore we are equipping them on how they can manage an intern virtually as well. I have already mentioned changing jobs, but then the next one becomes really key: upskilling of employees. So one piece that we are doing right now, even during this whole lockdown situation, is putting out a lot of content for upskill, reskill for employees, some personalized content, especially where we know that there is going to be a significant disruption by end of year. As an example, we know many of our branches where we have not opened them for the corona situation, we may likely not open them afterwards either. And then the branch employees in those locations will likely be displaced. So we know that there are some jobs like those which might be displaced by end of year. So we are starting to identify those areas and being a little proactive as part of transition office to start putting some upskill, reskill, and some other content that will start enabling these employees to get ready by end of year. The next one, of course, is engagement. We historically have been running once a year survey called Talk to Us. And we as a group then evaluated and said, does it make sense in this situation to run a large survey like that? And we decided to call it off. So we are now going to run what is called the localized pulse survey at a higher frequency, and also for a random set of population over a period of time continuously. That will give us a more real-time picture. I also spoke to many companies about how they are getting feedback, and one big piece that's coming is people are engaging in different ways of collecting very rapid, very continuous feedback. I heard that in Amazon, they are asking 1 or 2 questions every day, and it's mandatory for employees, at least in the US, to answer before they can log into work. I've also heard of some of manufacturing companies using AI to understand the sentiments of employees. In fact, some companies have started deploying AI on the Zoom calls to understand the sentiment. So as people speak, their tone, their expressions are also being captured to understand how are they feeling. So while somebody might say, yes, they are feeling fine, but they are also using the voice and the facial recognition to see what might be truly behind that. Is there something that's upsetting the individual? Are they going to be able to work, etc.? And finally, from a transition perspective, like I said, we know there are going to be displacements, eliminations of roles at the end of this. So what does that look like? And what impact will it have on our people? And therefore, while in the past, if I take my own experience, I know every bucket of these would be taken separately and done, something would happen. But never have we as an organization ever brought everything together as part of the transition office and said, hey, everything is on the table for discussion. And we are now going to discuss end-to-end view from an employee life cycle. And we have to go through every one of these and have a plan. Um, while it's an ideal thing to say, it is truly happening. And I believe that had it not been for COVID, I don't think, at least in our organization, we would really be talking and bringing everything together the way we did. So at this point, I'm going to throw a question back to the group. Are you seeing a few of these trends? Are you seeing some of these happen in your organization? And are you seeing a holistic view also being taken as part of the impacts of COVID? And if you can type your responses in the chat window, that'll be awesome. Perfect. I see a response saying yes. Are you seeing any specific one? Would you want to write about any specific one, or is it all of them? I like that. Virtual onboarding has become the norm, and multitasking and thinking on your feet. Perfect. Roles and responsibilities are getting redefined. That's a really good one. You're right. I think that goes back to that, what talent you need for the future. Upskilling and engagement is yes. And yeah, everything is web-based. Awesome. So we'll probably move to the next slide. Yes. And that brings us to this whole piece of rapid feedback is becoming necessary. And why I brought this slide, which is transition office, the bigger side of the transition office, is because one of the pieces that we also started seeing was to say, how do we assess where we are, and how do we assess from just what are some of the long-term impacts of COVID? And we said we probably will have about 5 things that we are going to assess based on how we need to change, what we need to do today to make that big change. So these are the 5 things that we are using as our lens. So the first is purpose. As an organization, what was our purpose? And it's not just to be a bank, but it was also to serve the people, serve the community. So are we doing that? Has it changed because of COVID? Has it changed in any way? Is it looking different? So we are starting to analyze that. The second is the culture itself. From a culture standpoint, our culture has been of a strict hierarchy. You have a manager of managers, etc., and you have this whole pyramid that falls underneath. So it's a very traditional organization, and therefore, if you picked a random manager in the middle management and asked them how empowered they feel, they would probably say very low today. And we now expect in the future, because we want people to operate by themselves, we want more empowerment. The role of the manager, we see that it is going to change significantly. If you want people to have empowerment, ability to manage their own teams differently, have quick response time, be able to understand how their people are feeling, empathize, etc., that's a very different role that we want people to play. Understand the more digital future that we are heading into. And therefore we said, if you are now starting to think about our culture, manager is just one side of it. What are some of the other things that we need to think about? And how do we therefore start thinking about culture, which is outcome driven? And therefore, one of the first things that we started doing as part of the transition office is to say, what does that ideal role of the manager for the future look like, and what can we do starting today to enable the manager. So we have started putting a lot of emphasis on putting content out for managers that will enable them. There are speaking points during COVID, there are speaking points and understanding what the new changes in the role will look like. There is already a talk that we are having with an external partner to start having a more involved content on how the manager of the future should start looking like, etc. That's just one side, but that's the people side that I wanted to talk about from a culture standpoint. There are, of course, many other things that we are going to bring in from a culture, but we are assessing that very, very deeply. The third thing, of course, is financials and operating model. As I mentioned, as a bank, our operating model has served us well. We are more a physical presence, 3,000 branches, etc. And therefore, our financials, everything has been laid out to support that. Now, with the digital future, we cannot pick that physical organization and put it in that digital future and say it is going to run well and financially it will still be the best. So right now we are also assessing, does our operating model have to change? Which means, do we change our organization structure? Should we be looking at differently structuring ourselves or the markets that we operate in? What are some of the talent hubs that we need to operate in? Is it efficient for us to be spread as much as we are if we don't need as many branches with our new digital offering? And therefore, that is one of the big areas where we are almost scrutinizing every part of the organization as part of transition office to say, are we in a position to really operate in the future in an efficient and nimble way? And we have to be a responsive organization. The next one, of course, is because banks are highly regulated in the US, the risk and regulation plays a huge, huge part. And the regulations are changing every day for us. If you would know, because there is a lot of emphasis now on personal protection plan, the PPP, which is being given to people who are in need of money, the small business loans, etc. All these have multiple levels of risk and regulation attached to them, which are changing every day how banks operate. So that's the risk and regulation side. And finally, we have come to realize that the customer expectations have changed rapidly and massively in the last 45 days. People don't want to come into the branches as much as they would have earlier. They would much rather interact with us in a digital way or through the phone. So how do we now start building more and more of these, I would say, applications that will help them interact with us remotely? And the most important, of course, being employee feedback. So how do we incorporate all the employee feedback, whether what they want to do in future, how they want to work, where they want to work? The implications are massive that are starting to come. So we are now assessing across these 5 lenses from a people and organization perspective on how we can start dealing with all these together. And that's how we have started laying out each of our plans across these 5, which would have not happened had it not been for COVID, quite honestly. I'll move to the next slide. And perhaps this is sort of in summary of what we are starting to see. I mentioned the cross-functional team. So we are seeing impacts not just to work, but also the workforce and workplace. We are seeing a more or a bigger percentage of almost virtual, which I call the hybrid. So they might have some time in office, but massive amount of time virtual, and the more 100% virtual. So we are seeing very, very small, maybe 20-30% of our workforce that might have to be in office presence. Only a sliver of our population, I would say, and the massive majority of 70-80% will be virtual. That is one trend we are starting to see, which is exactly the opposite of what it was 45 days back. 45 days back, if I had gone and said that 80%, 70% of our workforce will be virtual, people would have been like, yeah, sure, in the next 100 years. But that's not the case anymore. The next one is financial liquidity and cost cuts have actually given an impetus to a lot of initiatives. I talked about talent hubs. I talked about the org design. These were sort of projects that have always been sort of hanging around at the back, but never got any life. But because now the CFO also wants liquidity, many of these now are getting wings suddenly, and there's a lot of interest saying, oh yes, there is money on the table. Let's see how we can get this. but that's also an opportunity for us HR professionals to push our agenda on building those talent hubs, doing things that are right for the organization from an org design, etc. And the last one is the strategic scenario planning and the workforce design. We've always talked about there being an organization strategy, and HR is never on the table when the organization's strategic scenario planning happens. And we sort of come at some point and we are given a mandate saying, okay, this is the implication on the workforce, go hire 100 people or fire 50 people. But now, because of how the COVID is sort of changing and rapidly changing every single day, the workforce design, workforce decisions, and the strategic planning have to go hand in hand every single day. And this is truly the case where every single day you are living and breathing with your colleagues from the strategy side. And I can speak for myself at least. I work now more closely with my strategic colleagues who work in enterprise strategy at the bank than I ever did. And that is really because right now we need to be like the two sides of the same coin, as one cannot operate without the other. With that, I want to sort of take a pause. I know I have one more slide, but I wanted to ask a quick question and for people to type in to say, are you seeing such opportunities and initiatives that were never thought of bringing to the front, the second bullet that I talked about? Are you seeing such opportunities within the organization? And if yes, what might be those initiatives that are coming to the table, which were considered off limit? Do you see anything that's starting to come? Yeah, Srikanth says yes. Do you want to talk about any opportunity specifically? Forced adaptation to change, yeah. It's a good point. Change management has always been the heart and center, but we have probably now understood the real meaning of change. Infrastructure reduction, very good point. I think there's a lot of commercial real estate reduction that is being talked, because that will boost the liquidity in the immediate term. Yep. Maybe extended working hours. That's interesting. Remote first. That is correct. TCS has been one of the big companies to have announced very boldly that 60% of their workforce globally will be working from home. Extended working hours in the factory. Okay, that makes sense. Yeah, so people are now coming up with newer models. I was talking a couple of weeks back to a colleague of mine who's in the offshore oil and gas industry, and I heard that the way the folks get rotated on the rig and versus off the rig is now changing. Instead of rotating every 14 days, they will be rotated every 28 days. They are looking at newer initiatives to keep employees engaged on the rig. And they're also looking at different ways of training and multi-skilling these employees as they will spend longer and longer time. Healthcare is becoming a higher priority. Perfect. That's a very good one from Asmita. Rethinking compensation. Yes, I don't think we can pay the way we did, and the components of hardship, essential frontline people, etc., that is changing. One of the things that we have seen immediately in the US as soon as COVID struck was the frontline staff got anywhere between 20 to 25% salary bump for the period of time that they think that this is going to last. So the interesting thing is it's been on for the last 45 days and almost 60 days now, 2 months. And there is actually a question now many companies are asking, based on all the financial pressures, how long do you keep this salary bump on for the frontline workers as you start thinking about return to office? When do you pull this back? When do you wean the employees back from this salary bump that is being provided? I'll just jump into the last slide. I don't think my last slide will need too much time, but I think these are my personal silver linings, and I wanted to put it out there. I know all of these are things that will absolutely resonate with everybody on this group, either one or all of them. But my personal favorites are the third one, which is you learn about vulnerabilities of your leaders. You understand what keeps them going, not going, that they also have the not okay moments. They are not the paragons, who are sort of perfect at everything. And my personal favorite, of course, is the last one. No commute. I can live in loungewear. Some days I definitely miss not wearing my smart clothes and heels, but mostly I'm just happy being at home. And I think the spirit of make do with what you have, not just at home but also in office, I think it is going to bring the frugality will in some ways bring some invention, is my spirit. That's how I sometimes we run out of things at home, we don't get it, and then we make do with whatever we have. And I think that's exactly the same ask that we will have of all of us in our offices as well. So I just wanted to put some of the other silver linings. And of course, there are days when I feel absolutely miserable and not okay. But I have those days, and I give myself some time to recover. And then, then I see what the silver linings are. So with that, I would want to turn this back to Ankita. And Ankita, if you want to open the line, over to you.
Sure. Thank you so much, Anna. We are opening the session for questions. In case you have any questions, please feel free to ask in the chat box. We'll be taking it in the next 10 minutes.
I see an interesting comment here. I don't know if you want to talk about it, Dr. Ajit. Increment promotions are getting deferred, ready to adjust. Do you see this as something that will probably be a very 2020 phenomenon, or do you see what are you seeing in compensation space?
Yeah, good evening, everybody. This trend would be continue at least for next 2 years. That is what my personal learning and understanding after attending various speakers and industry leaders, various webinar and direct communication. So people will be definitely think of, actually make sure their job will continue first, and they are ready to let go this kind of promotion and increment kind of situation, at least for next 2 to 3 years. That is what I think.
Got it. And Asmita, rethinking compensation, can you explain what that might be?
I think Asmita has also asked a question.
Yes, I can see the question from Asmita. So the question is, do you see organizations moving towards ratio between the lowest and the highest paid staff? Absolutely. To just give an example of a typical ratio, or I would say the pyramid, you typically see about good somewhere around 50 to 60 as your frontline versus the 40% as your more senior staff. As part of the org design work that I'm doing right now, we are definitely relooking at some of these numbers. We are also looking at not just the ratio, but also the layers in the organization. To give you an example, we are actually looking at how do we, at this point in the organization, we have somewhere between 11 to 12 layers, which means the CEO is layer number 1, and the lowest ranking FT is 12 layers below. And therefore, what we are also looking at is to say, what are some of those layers in between that can be either punched together? So can we do some sort of bringing those layers together, or can we eliminate some layers? The reason being, if we have to be fast, if we have to be nimble, we have to reduce the gap between the senior most person and the junior most person for the decision to travel quickly and back. So one of the first things we have noticed is wherever we have that 12-layer organization in some parts, it has been an amazingly disastrous way of communicating with our people. So it's almost like a sieve. It goes from one person to the next to the next. And by the time it reaches the employee, it is too late. So we are definitely looking at bringing our layers down. We are thinking ideal would be somewhere between 6 to 8. It'll mean the span of control for our managers is going to expand phenomenally. We are also looking at saying from a more than highest paid and lowest paid, we are saying, should we have fewer smarter people in the organization? And therefore, it may not necessarily be a large army, but it might be fewer people, but we might be paying them more. And again, this varies by line of business. So what we might do in one may not be true of other. But those are some of the things we are thinking about. This is a question from Murli. Do you see any strategic changes in offshoring work due to this pandemic? Yes, absolutely. So I'm going to talk about some of the companies here as the pandemic broke. What started happening and what were some of the observations. And I will not take the name, but we had also some impact. The first thing that ended up happening was there were a few banks, especially banks that have outsourced to India, either through their own captives or through a third party. The first thing that happened was because of the lockdown, the inability to work from a secure facility meant that the work itself stopped. And that meant the work had to be rolled back in many cases out to the US. That is definitely being now perceived as one big, I would say, have we put too many eggs in one basket called India? And the fact that we have not had the ability to be able to perform remote work effectively during that time has definitely been something that people have walked away with as a learning. So that's one. The second one is more around the offshoring as not just offshoring, but should we look at nearshoring? So people are now definitely discussing saying, should we now have, it is like supply chain. It is exactly like how you would deal with a supply chain problem. The supply chain broke. If it is manufacturing with China, if it was with India, there were some patchiness that happened. While companies like TCS, Infosys, etc., jumped in very quickly and rewrote a lot of MSAs that allowed employees to do sensitive work from home. There was still a lot of anxiety about data security, people working from their homes and taking screenshots that could be sold with customer data, etc. So what is now starting to happen is definitely a rethink to say, should we be looking at nearshoring? What are some of the other options to manage the supply chain? The third one that I think was a big shock to the system was because of everything that's happening in this time. There is a ton of hacking and hacking episodes that have happened. The recent one being with Cognizant. And the companies that had, and some of them being financial services companies that were working with Cognizant, have overnight cut their relationships. And these have spanned for many years, 10, 15 years in some cases. And therefore, at this point, there is a little bit of skepticism with which everyone is viewing this whole offshoring piece. That's what I wanted to share. There is a question that's come from Sri Charan Kolu. It says, how can one adapt to the sudden change in the management style? It's a very good question. First of all, the sudden change is not just for one particular management layer, but for everybody. I think one big change that I see is starting from the leadership. I think the first set of folks who have to change would be the CEO and the C-suite. And in some ways, they are also role modeling. So when you say, how do we adapt? The question is your leadership adapting? Is your leadership being a role model and also adapting to the change? Or are they more in terms of saying, okay, let's wait and watch, this is going to go away? The answer is it depends on how your own leadership and your own C-suite is at this point messaging and adapting. The second one is instead of having to adapt to a sudden change, I would say one can think about this as how would you do if you had a scenario which is, should this continue for all through 2021? What would you do? If it were to end by end of Q3 and there's a vaccine, everybody gets vaccinated, or there is some sort of solution to this, either it's a medicine, by end of Q2, Q3, how would you respond to it? So rather than think about one sudden change, maybe think of it as laying out different scenarios and then think about what are those implications. Maybe that's one way of thinking. How would you operate in each of those scenarios instead of having one sudden change? Think about what, because it's still early days and we don't know what the exact output of all of this is going to be. So maybe laying out scenarios and then working out the solution for each of those might be a way of starting to shape your thinking. That's how I would respond to that, Sricharan. And then from Asmita, the question is, how do you see economies or countries deal with the massive unemployment? It's a very, very good question. Unfortunately, I don't think all countries at this point have a good plan on how they want to deal with the unemployment. I can definitely talk about companies that are starting to do some work around this. You probably may have already heard of Work Connect, an initiative that's been started by a couple of CHROs at Accenture, and I can definitely share some details on it with Murli and team, and they will be able to pass it along. This is to connect people who are going to displace employees, as well as others. On the other side, there are companies that are still continuing to hire, and therefore this is an global initiative that's been started by a few companies, massive companies, Fortune 50, who are starting to bring a global platform to exchange various types of roles and various types of upcoming displacements. That is one that I'm seeing. I have not seen any, I would say I have not seen any big initiative at a country level other than giving some unemployment relief like they have done in the US right now. But the initiative that I spoke about, if you haven't come across it, I'm happy to share the details. And if you think your company will be interested, it is absolutely free of cost to participate in. And I think that is something that everybody can make good use of.
I think we don't have any more questions. Thank you so much, Rama, for this super insightful session.
Thank you.
It was really interesting. Guys, tomorrow we have another session by Aruna. She's going to speak about HR in unexpected times. The session will be at 4 p.m. So I request you all to join for the session as well. Thank you so much. Thank you.
Thank you, Rama.
Thank you very much and have a great evening, everyone. Bye then.
You too. Bye.
Thank you.